So.
Hey,
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Tuesday, April 1st, 2025 at 1:02 in the afternoon. And we are continuing to go through bill introductions. We have Representative Priestley with us, who switched seats and now is in the.
I didn't lunch, so I can't crash.
57. An act relating to creating the Office of Entrepreneurship. Representative Priestley, welcome.
Thank you for having me, committee. Yes, this bill, you're gonna see a lot of me today. This bill really came from, so I had a 9 bill omnibus bill for entrepreneurship efforts last year. And so this was reintroduced just this one piece. Another piece was cottage food, which I'm glad you did. So this came about for a number of different reasons. One, I've been teaching small business planning classes for the last couple years. I served on our CDFI, Community Development Finance Institution board, our chamber, local chamber board, business association board, lots of boards in the economic development space and workforce development space for years, and especially being in little tiny rural Vermont, as everyone knows in this room very well. The kind of the economic development services for our region are actually shared between land mass area that takes you 2 hours to drive across. As far as you might have one person for SBA or SBDC or any of those that are stretched really thin across a lot of different towns. And so that's actually one reason why I started my co-working space, to be able to offer business planning courses and fill a gap there that we had. And so a number of different things in the landscape of economic development for Vermont is a lot of different services, stretched super thin, not able to always be communicating with each other or even know who they are. Being in a number of different rooms where, a bunch of people are offering small business planning classes, but they don't know that because they only know the big players. I think we saw that with our small business development day a little bit. So I went through my co-working space, I became a member of Startup Champions Network, and then kind of got introduced to the Right to Start effort, which I was on a panel in DC last session with a bunch of different entrepreneurship co-working spaces and just efforts. And some of those are actually statewide efforts by their kind of the equivalent of ACCD across the country. And so the model of kind of the Right to Start bills is one that I thought, especially with kind of creating an Office of Entrepreneurship being a first step, could be good. And we do have kind of director of entrepreneurship, but tends to be focused, I think, a lot on kind of the import export kind of big stuff. Whereas what I've seen in my little town, and then also just in interacting with people from around the country, you'll have entrepreneurs who are just trying to do the home kitchen or trying to do a home photography business or whatever, and they're not necessarily going to be on the radar of when the state needs to focus on bigger kind of money and employment opportunities for people. So this was just kind of step to try to help establish a more focused effort on entrepreneurship services in Vermont in a way that I don't think that we quite give justice to at the moment. That's pretty much it.
I have a question. So why would this be different or better than just giving more money to the SBD, to the Small Business Development Center?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so SBDC, so I worked for Southern Foreman Enterprise during COVID years, too. And all of our resources are really great. But again, especially with something like SBDC coming from having more of a federal mandate from the SBA with that subsector being SBDC, in a lot of ways, so Center for Women Enterprise was also kind of a wing of that as far as women's business development centers. And so much of what we were supposed to track, I had to set up, I was supposed to spend $200,000 in grant money in programming and things like that. So my charge was really the only things you care about are jobs created, jobs saved, That was really like it. And so I would love for us to see, that's like a federal mandate. I would love for us to start like thinking about like what does success look like for Vermont? We do not have so it's a report that Kevin Chu did on the kind of Vermont like entrepreneurial ecosystem, economic development kind of future. That fills a gap of like we haven't, I believe this is still true. We haven't had a statewide economic development plan since the Shumlin administration. And so when I'm like writing grants for economic development and workforce development myself, I have the kind of like the regional plan and I've served on the East Central Vermont Economic Development District to create the strategy for our region for our economic development district for a number of years. And so we have that. And then we have the federal one. And then as far as statewide goals, we haven't had an updated kind of like set of goals for a while. So I guess this is trying to say that like we need to right size things like entrepreneurship, like entrepreneurial support systems from the ground up, I think in Vermont. If that makes sense.
So Mike, where would you see this office sort of being situated in the grand scheme of government?
Yeah, so definitely ACCD. We did try to start engaging with Nick Grimley. I know he got offered kind of to serve on like a national like leadership cohort of entrepreneurial kind of like people invested in that. I don't know what the status is of that. But yeah.
That's what it would be. Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? Hey. For Representative Rachelson. It's too efficient.
The agenda did say 110.
As soon as Representative Rachelson comes in.